Armored delivery driver finds out they are not above the law. I worked for a dispensary and we handled a lot of cash. So every morning and sometimes 23 times throughout the day, an armored van would arrive and deliver change or pick up the safe contents. As a medical dispensary, we had a lot of patients who used the handicap parking spots. There were only 3 for the whole building. Yet the morning armored truck driver would always be sure to pull his van up sideways across all 3 spots. The morning delivery took the longest, which often meant customers would arrive and not be able to use those parking spots. After asking the driver not to do this anymore, I was told to call his boss if I had a problem. His boss said if I had a problem, to handle it myself. So I did. The parking enforcement sent 2 people to our location, and when he pulled his van into place as usual across all 3 spots, they pulled an enforcement car up on either side of him and wrote him a total of 5 infractions. Shortly after we switched companies, which was probably unrelated, but I secretly think it was the small shame they felt inside after being jerks about something we all know better than to do ourselves. I went to the bank and the armored car guy blocked all of the handicap spots. It was winter, icy, and I was on crutches after another leg surgery. I asked the guy to move. He flipped me the 1-finger salute. I took a picture of him and his truck, and emailed the armored car company. I got a call the next morning from the company, telling me that they were going to fire the driver, as this was the 3rd complaint about him specifically doing that. Bye-bye job. So I did. The parking enforcement sent 2 people to our location, and when he pulled his van into place as usual across all 3 spots, they pulled an enforcement car up on either side of him and wrote him a total of 5 infractions. So, I applaud the results. But what were the 5 infractions? I can imagine one for each handicapped space he occupied, then another for parking in the wrong direction, or whatever it's called, but I'm having a hard time coming up with a 5th. Nor do I know if my guess for the 4th one is correct. Good one. I was on my way to work. At the local commuter rail station there was semi-truck and trailer blocking at least 8 spots. I asked the station agent about it. It was here when I arrived to open at 4:30 a.m. Called transit police, but they take forever to come deal with parking violations. I have about 10 minutes before my train arrives. I'm on the elevated platform looking down at the truck. Call my friend who is on the community relations team of the city police. Hey, do you know anyone interested in dealing with a semi taking up lots of spots at the train station? I'll make some calls. Next day I asked the station agent what happened with the truck. 15 minutes after we talked yesterday, a city cop showed up, walked up and down the truck, then started writing tickets. Multiple spots. Illegal in our city. No large vehicles allowed. Blocking through traffic. Cab was at an angle with the fender sticking out past the lines. Overnight parking. No parking midnight to 5 a.m. unless you are riding the train. Then he started inspecting the truck and wrote a few more. Driver showed up around 10 a.m. and was obviously angry about all the tickets. If you do not have a monopoly, being an AH to your customers is a bad idea. Handicap parking is sacrosanct. Years ago in the shopping center where I worked, the car park guys would put a sticker on the window of a car parked there without a placard. One guy didn't get the hint, so they covered every bit of glass with the stickers. I regret not doing something similar. I offered a large woman in a wheelchair a ride home from the Starbucks she would hang out at. And then I said, meet me at the top of the ramp, about 45 doors down, next to the disabled parking spots. I drive my SUV over there, and someone with no disabled pass was taking up both disabled parking spots. so I parked right behind him. I got out and walked to the top of the ramp, just as the car owner and his 2 kids came out of the pizza place with their pizza. They watch as I slowly walk her chair down the ramp and over to my SUV. It took a while to get this large woman into my SUV. Then I stored her wheelchair in the back. It probably took about 10 minutes for me to do all of that. And this guy just stood and watched, frowning as his pizza is getting cold, but knowing he couldn't say anything. I then drove off. In hindsight, I wish I had called the police and kept him blocked until they showed up. That would have been a very expensive pizza. CA $250, $500 fine each ticket. I had a truck that decided to park where they weren't supposed to for a delivery. I asked them to move. They didn't. No problem for me. They didn't know that 2 other construction vehicles had permission to park in that spot. And so on the Friday afternoon, they parked in their spaces, and the truck couldn't get out. The truck driver complained about getting their truck out. I advised them that the construction vehicles will be moved on Monday morning, and they can wait until then. In our city, any citizen, in good standing, can get certified to write disabled parking tickets. You take a class, and can't interact with people, can't judge beyond the legally required placards, and it's only for disabled spaces. The cool part is that it lets people enforce the rules in private company lots and such that parking enforcement or police would normally never see. Like one of my employees, who was disabled, asking building security to move, and when they didn't, they got tickets. It ended up in us getting a new security company was the rumor, as I was told they complained to the landlord, who was not happy about it. So in OP's case, they could have written them a ticket directly, or, to be more careful about their job, tipped off an unrelated friend to happen by and do it. A pair of FedEx drivers at a FedEx Kinko's got really upset for getting ticketed by a disabled guy while loading packages, taking all the handicap spots. Cops showed up and don't know what happened next. But the center was terribly designed with zero loading area too. Still, being the owner, tenant is not an exception. And that includes the open buffer space required around the spots. Grade A+ MC here. You stood up for your customers and gave the jerks a lesson they won't forget. Here in California, auto dealerships are notorious for using their ADA spaces for autos being sold or serviced. It drives me crazy. Would the cops really do anything about it? During the pandemic, a taproom went in across the street from my apartment and survived on Togo orders for their first year. I noticed that people would sometimes park out front and run in to pick up orders, not a huge deal. But there's no parking on either side of the street, so they basically blocked a whole lane on an already narrow street. Then the pandemic ended and they started getting busy, and people started parking out front and staying all evening. 58 cars, blocking the street for hours at a time. I went in and talked to one of the bartenders, just giving him a heads up that it was becoming an issue, and asking if maybe they'd talk to their customers about it. He blew me off, and said it wasn't necessarily even their customers. So I went home, called parking enforcement, and the next time I went outside they all had tickets. My neighbor did it the next day. The day after that I saw one of their employees outside putting up no parking signs. Hasn't been a problem since. That's just heinous behavior on the driver's part. I do get that they need to be closest to the building for security reasons. But that's one parking spot, not all 3. I drove a large box truck in a major city without much parking. The rule was to turn in all parking tickets by the end of the day. The drivers never had to pay any of them and the company wrote it off as a cost of business. I don't think they could claim it on their taxes. but they just took the hit because it was cheaper than legit parking. Thank you for doing this. I am disabled and use a handicapped tag and park in the handicapped spaces at the dispensary. That is so wrong, and at least being ticketed is fun to read about. Good MC. I was hoping the people who needed the handicap spots parked around the armored car and left him stranded all day. Our office security firm always pulls up for their evening checks in the disabled space. I've never seen the space used at that time of day, but it rubs me up the wrong way that they think it's fine to do, when the actual employees of the company wouldn't dream of it. They could park anywhere, but it has to be there. Gits. Used to work for one of the big armored truck companies in the US. The drivers, guards, and management all firmly believe they are allowed to block any space in the name of their safety and getting in and out of the buildings as fast as possible. They get a sick enjoyment out of it when people complain about it. It's a bunch of BS. His boss said if I had a problem, to handle it myself. Okay. Your company is fired. Fucking good. Special circle of hell for people who block handicap spots like that. As a person that uses handicapped spaces, I applaud you. I constantly see delivery drivers, UPS, FedEx, etc., using handicap spots without a permit. True, it's the only open space available for them, but they forget that handicapped people actually use those spaces, too.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.